Hello, I'm a Flage, and I can no longer escape. Kira.
Hi, I'm a 1/3 green creature that might produce an infinite combo. Riley.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We're talking about Modern now.
Exciting.
Because we're in the fun part of the competitive season where we're playing Modern, which is very, very exciting. And now we're on the tail end of Pro Tour Amsterdam, which is very exciting.
Yeah, Pro Tour just finished a couple of days ago, which is awesome. Got to see a lot of new takes on some like old decks, a couple new things sort of sneaking in there, and it's been a really exciting time.
We also had some fantastic Aussie players abroad on Team Bananas who were playing at the Pro Tour. Most notably, Nick Talbot came 9th, Ben
So
Tudman
upsetting.
30. I know, like just on Breakers, just
on
the
Breakers,
worst.
and with such a cool deck.
Yeah, very unfortunate, but it's really interesting now because, you know, as of time of recording, the Pro Tour Amsterdam has just finished up a couple days ago, and we're now starting to prep for Spotlight Series Brisbane, which is the first Spotlight Series being hosted in our beautiful Australia for the first time in a couple years, I imagine.
Yeah, we're so excited. Like, oh my gosh, give me not a GP, but a GP.
But give me a GP. It's a Spotlight Series.
Spotlight Series. I'll learn what it is one day.
We'll figure it out. So, welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm hoping that you repeat your showing at the 100K at the Spotlight Series. I think that'll be very, very good. Obviously, I hope you win.
Yeah,
I hope you don't come second.
Yeah,
sorry, top 8.
Top 8.
And
I'd
then
love
you
to
win.
top 8 and then
And then win.
Yeah, I don't want to come second. I'd love to top 8 and not come second.
Well, look, diving right in, we're on the tail end of Pro Tour, and you're obviously a part of the Quality Lines team. How does an event like Pro Tour affect the prep and testing that goes into preparing for something like Spotlight Series?
Well, there's a lot of hot takes that sort of come once the Pro Tour is done.
Yeah.
People claiming they're so smart, they knew everything all along. It's like, why? I've been telling you this deck's great. But sometimes there's some stuff that really like catches you off guard. Sometimes there's a Cosmoglyph that's just flinging you for 20. And that was on none of our radars.
It was really fun, though.
It's super fun to watch.
I was thrilled.
Yeah. I think we're always, as a team, we love looking at meta shares. A big part of the testing process for us is you try to figure out what you expect the decks to be, can give you a good idea of what's a deck maybe that we could play that'll have a good spread into those decks. We're like any team, I think. Everyone's got their biases, though. Can be a bit hard. We try really hard to do team decks when we can. And I think for Modern, most of us have played the format for long enough now that we're happy enough to pivot around a little bit. But it's going to be hard to get everyone on whatever deck we end up settling on. There's some really cool choices to start off with. I think it's really hard because I've got a lot of biases, and I'm like, guys, I can teach you all Titan. It's going to be great. I've got like a 7-hour PowerPoint. I reckon I can dumb it down to like 5 hours for you guys, but for some reason, no one wants to listen.
Crazy. I don't know why no one would want to listen.
I don't know, but maybe I'll put some more memes sprinkled in there and we can see what we can do. But no, it's really tricky. I think there's still a lot of lead up. The online atmosphere of like tournaments now is things move really quickly. I know that the last Modern Pro Tour was won by Tameshi Belcher, I think, which is a deck that you really don't see a lot like in the meta anymore. And by the end of that Pro Tour, even though it won it like had disappeared entirely by like the next day. It was like, no, everyone's ready to beat it. So obviously this tournament was a top 8 draft. So the Modern data, it's kind of weird that sometimes you see a deck win and it didn't actually do well throughout like the Swiss rounds, but we won't have that for this. We're just going to have the draft. So the players that know what they're looking for, which is strong Swiss results, will see. Like the 10-0 deck was Boros Energy, which is a deck that it's good, but come on, guys, we can do better than this. You can be Neoforming turn 2. You can be Cosmoglyphing.
I would say you're looking at a 1/1 and a 1/2 and being like, guys, just put a 6/6 into play.
Come on, we can Titan. You don't have to combo, but it'd be pretty cool if we did.
Well, it's actually really interesting. How does a Pro Tour like Marvel Superheroes, where the top 8 is draft, kind of skew the perception? Like, you're kind of starting to talk about, the 10-0 deck was Boros Energy. How does something like this kind of skew the perception of what the metagame is and what the best decks are?
I think it probably doesn't skew it too much because of the top 8. People are still going to look at the Modern results. I think there's probably a little bit more of the players that are less involved in like that competitive churn constantly that don't have like that one deck to look at as like, that was the best deck, I'm going to overtune for it in my sideboard.
Yeah.
So maybe the sideboards might be a little bit more diverse and open because like the Swiss rounds, like you have to filter through that data anyway. But I think you're looking through those decks, you know, there was a lot of this brute scale deck, which has existed for a really long time. And everyone had a really different take on it, which is really like interesting to see. Like a lot of lists did well, but some lists had 1 Fleshraker, some lists had 4. I know that like I've got mates in my team that have played that deck for a long time and we thought that card was really good, but then people do really well with 1 copy. So it can be interesting to try to figure out where things land. I think because it's modern, people have pet decks. I think that there probably won't be too much of a difference between if this had a modern top 8 compared to a draft top 8. I think people are just going to look at the Swiss results really as the thing that you get most of your data from.
100%. And it's really interesting as well. You touched on in the last episode we had you on here that the Australian metagame tends to be a little bit slow. And, you know, you alluded to the online meta and how a lot of times immediately after an event, there's a ton of leagues where it's just copy paste decks from the event of people kind of, it seems like doing their own research and confirming, is this deck actually cracked, and trying to see, can I just copy paste the list? Because we live in the digital age and the information is readily available. You can just go, most winningest list, paste, play, win a league 5-0. And so where do you see the kind of Pro Tour metagame shifting for the Australian Spotlight Series?
I think we'll still see some shift from it, but probably not a ton. I think if you look at the most winning decks from the Pro Tour, like that data is like really open now. Like a lot of people are putting matchup matrices that has like the win rate data. So like Frank Karsten, obviously, shout out to the GOAT. So you can see Simic Neoform was, I believe, the most winning deck. And also the player that won the Pro Tour also played that deck. So people might have a little bit of a bias that that deck's really good, either pick it up or at least respect it in my deck lists. I think that the ramp decks were also really good. And when you looked at the category, it was the Trudge deck that looked like it might be better, which is like the Fight Rig Trudge, put a big creature into play.
All right.
So that deck looks really cool. I think probably some people will try that out because there's a lot of Eldrazi players, I think, at least in Melbourne locally where I play. So some people will probably give that a crack. And I think it looked like it had some really good matchups, but there's a lot of like weaknesses to the deck as well. And I think we'll see people pivot to trying to beat that deck and the Neoform deck quite aggressively. I think the 2 decks that like probably dropped off a lot compared to where people were expecting was your Affinity decks and your Boros decks. Like I thought Affinity was probably the best deck going into the field. Super aggressive starts. You get to play Moxes. You've got counter spells in the main deck. You can have open on turn 1, but still like a massive board state, which is kind of crazy. But it had like sub 50% win rate. So yeah, I think it's really hard to predict. It's like I think you got to keep your eye to the ground on these online metagame results and try, just get the dart exactly where you need to. Like it's really tough.
Yeah. From a team perspective, what is you mentioned the idea of multiple people being on the same deck. For people who aren't on a team or are not familiar with teams, what kind of is the benefit there? What is the point of a bunch of people on the team running the exact same deck in terms of, data aggregation, experience, communication, and knowledge being shared?
I think the big one is plans that you feel comfortable with. I think something that's really popular online is who's got a sideboard plan for this deck. Like, you win a tournament, $5 for my sideboard guide, make $1. Like it's a pretty good model. I think that having a plan for when you go into these big tournaments is really helpful. Obviously, fatigue is a real thing that can hit players. Make sure you got your snacks and your water on you, but also just make sure you've got enough reps with the deck that you're comfortable enough with. I'm going to face these top 5, maybe modern top 10, top 20 decks. I know what I want to do and how I want my plans to pivot. And I think in a team environment, we're really lucky. You can test what you think the hard matchups are. You can be comfortable with maybe an unorthodox game plan. I know back when Birdie was on Quality Lines in Pioneer, we had he had like the humans deck, and he'd found this like transformational sideboard plan, and it was like phenomenal for him in some of his tougher matchups. And we've had some similar ideas in the past that has been really helpful for us. So I think that if you're not in a team, and one of the benefits of Modern is it's existed for a long time, you can have a pet deck that you put a lot of reps in, so you can still have the performances of like a strong team with a deck that you just really love, and just become someone that's great with that archetype, have good game plans for what's going on, and just rock up and crush it.
How much does, Modern, obviously, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Modern, while it's had some up and down decks, things that come into popularity and out of popularity. You mentioned the Tameshi Belcher deck that we've literally not seen since it won its Pro Tour. Kind of where does personal preference tend to fall in like, pet decks? Where do people tend to kind of rest on their laurels because of the way that Modern as a format exists and changes?
I think we've seen like there's been Modern RCs in Australia, and we've seen a lot of players pivot to what they believe is the best deck, even if they might be known for other things.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm known as a Titan player, and I try every chance I can to play that deck, because it's just the most joy in the world. Why would you want to play anything else? But Grinding Breach existed in the meta, and even though I wasn't the best pilot on it, I definitely was like, this deck's the nuts. I'm going to try it play it to the best of my abilities. So I think that there's definitely a bias, but I think specifically like players on teams and like people that have either made the Pro Tour or are quite hungry to like, make that next step, I think they're going to be willing to try and find what they believe the best deck is and, assemble the parts for that. But I think personal bias does come in, which is why you normally see the meta shares for like a standard event. Sometimes you see those 30-40% prowess fields, but in Modern you might see like, I think at this last Pro Tour nothing capped over 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll probably see something quite similar of quite a good spread of decks, and which is that benefit of know your deck really well so you can perform your plans well, and then if something unorthodox or all of a sudden the mill deck's back in the format, you're ready to beat it.
It also feels, you touched on Broodscale having a couple different kinds of decks and people iterate a little bit, but it definitely feels very different to Standard where, we, on the back of talking about this anti-prowess deck where you did kind of fundamentally change the creature base in a prowess deck that ultimately saw a lot of success, but there doesn't seem to be the same kind of 2% changes across the board in Modern in the same way, and people tend to be a lot more linear in their decisions when it comes to Modern. Do you find that to be the case?
I think not quite. I think if you look at like a big example would be like the Espagorios deck.
Okay.
I think that you see these like 2% changes that are quite impactful. Like a big argument we have in our team, but you also see online is how good is the Philagi Archaeologist builds compared to the Quantum Riddler builds. And Bass has played that deck on and off many times, and he's like a Philagi Archaeologist main. I've never seen a man cast that card in so many unplayable decks. So that's a list that I know that there's like an online grinder that is like quote unquote got a perfected list that he really likes for that build.
Mm-hmm.
But you see a lot of people at the Pro Tour, they like drawing extra cards and they move to the Quantum Riddler build. So I think that, there is a lot of these, like the lists otherwise, typically look the same. And so there's a lot of these small changes that can be quite impactful. Even looking at something like the Boros Energy decks, a lot of the time I feel like they do look quite similar, but then they're like, what's my top end going to look like? I think it was Martin user that was playing like Reckless Pyro Surfer because he's like, why would I want a top end? I can kill you.
Yeah. What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. Like, why would I go to turn 4? Like, turn 4 should be the last turn, max, not you draw cards for some mythical turn 5.
Yeah.
So, I think that there are a lot of these small changes that can, like, fundamentally shift how these decks want to access.
Amazing. How are you planning to kind of like utilize the information from the Swiss rounds at Pro Tour to influence kind of where you guys take testing in quality lines?
I think you kind of just want to have a look at what were the top performing decks. And in Modern, there are quite a lot. And you just want to try and find a deck you feel like has good game plans, or at least that you can pivot good game plans to. I know that something that we found in the last RC, I worked on Titan with Rowan Millers, and we found that we had some really good plans because the modern meta bases for a lot of decks allow you to have access to like so many colors, you can find a game plan for most things. I think that people can be quite stuck in their thinking of, oh, I'm playing this deck, it's got a bad matchup against deck B. But you can have a great game 2 and 3 if you're willing to, stray away from, what the normal list looks like, which can be really scary. And that's one of the benefits of a team of like, I got a really dumb idea. Can I like practice with someone? Yeah. And, a lot of the time you'll lose. But
but sometimes.
But every so often, you come up with like a gem like Rowan did. And he's like, I think Null Elemental Blast is kind of goated in this, Titan deck. And whether or not it was, we felt like it was really good from our games. And, Esper was really good then. Hit Ashiok. And hit like Emissary against like the Affinity deck. So there can be some real, like, Modern's got a huge card pool. Like, people pull out cards that I've never seen before in their sideboard games, and all of a sudden I was like, someone's done more homework than me, and, I guess I'm going to lose. So it's good.
How is the prep different from something like Standard? Like, you guys obviously did an amount of work for the RC in Adelaide as well as the 100K. Kind of, how does it vary? Because the metagames between these two, when you're talking about like a 30-40% metagame share being one deck in specific in Standard, and then you go into a format like Modern where you've got 15, 12, 10, and even some of the 5% decks can be really, really strong. Kind of, how is the approach different between the two formats?
I think in Standard it's quite easy to... Oh, quite easy is a terrible way to put it. In Standard, you have the opportunity to find meta decks from time to time. Like, I can build this deck in a way that I feel like targets the top 5 decks really well. That might be 80% of the room. I'll be really happy. Mm-hmm. In Modern, I think you're looking at power. You want to make sure that you're doing something quite strong. I think that's why we saw really good success from like decks like Neoform of like, I'm going to put a turn 2 26 powered creature attacking you. You better be able to kill it.
Yeah.
And so I think that anytime you're picking a deck, you're quite lucky in a format like Modern where all the decks are quite powerful. And so as long as you can streamline that deck to do something quite strong, I think that's a really good place to be, because people stumble, people mulligan, like especially in big tournaments. Like you want to have free wins when you can get them. Like it's a really nice mental break as well of just like, all right, that round was kind of free because I drew my best cards and like I just sort of got there. Mm-hmm. So I'd be looking at a deck that has strength, but again, strong plans for when I need them.
Here's a controversial question for you. What do you think is the worst deck in Modern right now?
I really don't think the Boros Energy deck is very good. I think that it's fine. I think it does a really powerful thing, and I think I've lost to it 1,000 times, and I'm probably going to lose to it quite a lot after making that comment.
Yeah. We'll play this back later.
Yeah, exactly. Well, watch me just lose
clip it for
so
later.
Convincingly. But I think that even though it has like some quite busted starts, a lot of decks can go over the top of what it's doing. I think that any deck that I'm considering, like it's going to be in the back of my mind of like Boros Energy will exist. It's very popular. It's going to be a reasonable percentage of the metagame, even if it isn't in its strongest state. Like it's still really good, even with 3 bans we think that it's been hit by.
It's probably more. Like we remembered Raptor, One Ring, Flage. And I'm fairly sure that there's one other thing in between those, and I'll put it on the screen for what I've forgotten is the other card.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's something else. And it's interesting in that way of like, this has been like a dominant deck. It's been really strong. We were kind of idly chatting about people will just go, yeah, and I'll play Boros Energy because it's the best thing to do. But in saying that, there's also this kind of like sardonic, Titan player grin of like, sure, but most other creatures in the format have more than 1 power.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like the deck just sort of can, if you respect it, crumbles quite quickly. I think if you're a absolute master of Boros, I'm very scared to verse you because you probably have really strong plans. But you got to have every turn, every trigger. There's no Magic Online reminding you of stuff. Things get missed in paper. And I know that I'm not that player, so I'm definitely not going to be touching that deck.
Well, speaking of online as well, I mentioned at the start this idea of copy paste decks and the way that people can just take something that wins, put it in a league, and see how it goes. Do you find that that's sometimes a misrepresentation of a deck's power, or do you think, how much does online impact paper in terms of results? Is there sometimes oh, that's interesting, I'm going to run that through a league and see how that goes, or do you think sometimes, the online shuffler just works really well and it turns out well? Kind of where does online fall in the hierarchy of knowledge that you accrue for a format like Modern?
I think because Modern has these quite interesting decks, like there are stuff like the Yawgmoth deck, the Broodscale deck, Titan, that have combos that actually they don't display the way that they would like to online. Like in paper, I can say, I can do this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And your opponent's like, yeah, I understand. If I type that to my opponent, they're like, play it out. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I didn't win all of those games. I think more often than not, it doesn't impact the percentage of points to the degree that sometimes people might think they do. But it definitely, it has some effect. And it also will scare people off playing the deck, I think, is another thing. Like, I know a lot of people that I've had chats with that are Titan players, and they're like, I will not touch that deck online. That sounds miserable. And I've tried it, and they're not wrong.
How many clicks to add 1 mana?
Too many. Too many. Why is there 20 triggers on the stack right now? My computer can't handle it.
Tap, untap, float this, click this, do it again.
Do it again. Just so I can put 1 card on the stack.
It's definitely really, really interesting. Well, what are your thoughts kind of going into Spotlight Series? Kind of where are you sitting right now?
I think our team's got a lot of work. I think, people are still moving around a lot and trying to figure out what's going on. It'll be a while before we probably settle on something that we're really keen on. Like, I've still got, is it a month? Over a month?
It's a month. It's a little bit more than a month. It's
oodles of time. I'm not worried.
Plenty of time.
I'll come up with that deck last minute. That'll be fun.
Just do what Fatso did.
Yeah, exactly. Just pivot to the last second and then turn out I'm on Boros energy and I'm really upset about this episode.
I was going to say, it'd be really funny. You just at the last minute go, fine, I'll play Boros energy.
Yeah, just birdie in my ear chirping away. But yeah, I think I know that whatever my team works on or any other testing that I end up doing, I've got my Titan deck sleeved and ready to go.
Yeah.
And I'm really likely to play that deck. I really like that deck. And it's always fun to get to play a pet deck at a high-level tournament and be somewhat correct. Probably not completely, but somewhat correct that it's a fine choice to play. So yeah, I hope my team does a lot of work for me and just tells me the correct decks to play. And yeah, that's the only way that I do well at these tournaments is a lot of help from the rest of the team and a lot of beers and testing. It really keeps the cogs flowing nicely.
Is the beer's a fundamental part?
It's so fundamental. I can't understate how important it is for a team to be, have the cogs lubricated.
Because it's on the bum bag, right?
Well, it is on the bum bag. Yeah, we've got the Quality Lines team logo here, and you can see this Learning App Chiwazi, which is for for education.
For education.
And then the beer here pouring to make sure that you're nice and hydrated for your matches.
Hydrated is
really important.
Really
You got to have your snacks. Got to have your mid round beer is really important. That's the only way I can get through a tournament.
Well, one last thing, as the Titan player, kind of how are you feeling? Obviously Flay's just not escaping anymore. Boros Energy has taken another hit. How are you feeling in the face of the Lotus Field ban for Titan?
I remember. I wasn't in tears, but I was sad. I was like, my deck's gone. What am I going to do? And then the Titan Cabal is very powerful, mysterious in their ways. And I remember I was at uni and I had this assignment that I was meant to be doing. And all I was doing was writing numbers on my notepad. I was like, all right, I start with 2 mana here. And then now I'm on 4 mana. And now I'm on 8 mana. And then if I cast Escape Shift here, this will do that. And then trying to figure out how I can still produce all of these combos. And it turned out there was a lot of, really in the tank nerds around the world doing that same math. And they came up with some very interesting lines. The deck is still around. And let me tell you, so much more fun to solitaire now because nothing is deterministic the way that it used to be. So I'm watching Netflix. Let me tell you, I'm making every game action possible and just hoping to speed it up a little bit so my hopefully my opponent at least learns that I don't know what I'm doing quickly or I win quickly.
Yeah. It's really interesting how bans like that can affect a deck like Titan. I remember back when Meia and I were discussing what became the inevitable VV ban. There was a brief conversation around, is it Cauldron that goes or is it VV that goes? Do you take the bad thing or the thing that enables the bad thing? And one of the interesting points there that Meia brought up was, well, there's a chance that when you say you take away Cauldron, what if it turns out there's actually something that was way better than Cauldron, but no one was investigating because of how powerful this specific combo was? So there was every chance that, Lotus Field gets banned and it turns out this random land from Avatar is way better than Lotus Field, but no one looked at it because Lotus Field was the best way to do the Titan game plan. So it's interesting kind of like how things have changed. And
yeah, I think something that has turned out to have existed for a long time is the way that the Titan deck loops now is you cast Escape Shift and you use Mirror Pool to create a copy of Escape Shift on the stack, which acts as your Lotus Field, sacking all your lands, and then Analyst brings everything back, and so you've got this sorcery speed, infinite resource loop that you can produce with quite a lot of setup, but is still possible when you need to do it. And that had been in the deck the whole time. And I'm sure some players better than me knew about it, but I had no clue and I hadn't heard anyone talking about it. So, it's fun to see the combo freaks just get their brain juices flowing and come up with these really interesting game plans.
Yeah. So we'll put you down for Titan to start with.
Yeah, I'm a soft lock on Titan for sure.
We're gonna put you down for Titan to start with, and when you play Energy, we're going to turn you into a cat token.
I'm so upset. I'm so upset.
Well, it's very, very exciting, and thank you again for joining me for a wonderful day of Modern Speak.
I do love some Modern Speak. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm actually really curious about this Titan PowerPoint now. I think I would like to enroll because I've
already done one team Titan PowerPoint, and it was really, really exciting because during the tournament, I had teammates come up to me and they're like, "Oh, your advice on how to beat the deck worked," and I was like, yeah, the deck's actually really beatable if you know how it works.
If you know what you're doing, and I know what I'm doing. My name's Riley Jones.
That's the one. So, I'm excited. Normally, we'll have someone do like little PowerPoints for our team, and they might talk about a deck that they put a lot of time in, even if they don't end up playing it. And they're like, "Hey, here's how you beat it." And so, I'm sure that I will at some point be doing another Titan PowerPoint, and it will be terrible, and everyone will fall asleep. And they're like, just get to the part where we beat it. Stop explaining all these silly loops.
I don't need to know about Mirror Pool. Just tell me how I win.
Yeah, I cast this card, they die, right? Why are you making it more complicated than that?
Well, you've got 1 month, so best of luck. 1 month is of time of recording, so best of luck with the rest of your Titan prep, and thanks for spending time with me today.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
Well, thank you so much, #1 Boros enthusiast, Riley Jones. I wrote that down for Titan enthusiast.
Thank you.
Riley Jones. It's a pleasure as always to have you here, and I hope you get to top 8 this event as well. I'm cheering you on. Where can people find you and keep up with you?
So I am Riley Bad at Magic Bones on Twitter. There will be a Titan presentation that will be posted there. Read at your own peril. After the tournament, obviously, team secrets. I can't be spilling that.
Yeah.
And then, shout out to the Quality Line team. Huge props. Thank you so much for helping me become the player I am today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
That's all that we've got for you guys today. New episodes of Raise the Standard release on Mondays at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. You can keep track of all of our releases at Raise MTG on Instagram and Blue Sky. A huge thanks to the Hen House Recording Studio for the ongoing use of their space. And a huge shout out to MTGBazaar for sponsoring us. We'll see you guys next week.